If you wanted a lasting image of yourself in the times before the invention of cameras and photography, you'd have to commission a portrait by an artist. This couldn't have been an easy job for the artist. I mean, obviously it requires great skill to depict a lifelike image through the medium of paint, but that was probably the easy part. The artist also had to strike a fine balance between how the subject wished to be perceived versus how they actually looked. You could draw the ire of a vain subject if they thought your portrait made them look ugly, but there were also cases of more humble subjects being annoyed with portraits they thought were overly flattering. Further complicating the artist's job is the idea that a great artist is not only able to capture the likeness of their subject, but their character. So what do you do when a big fat bastard tells you to make sure to depict their heroic nature in all its glory? You might paint something like this portrait of Henry VIII, where the monarch's hulking silhouette somewhat resembles a space marine. In fact, the broadness of his shoulders is perhaps somehow even more exaggerated. He also possesses the legs of a rugby player whose hobbies include taking long striding walks across the continents. Although historians have noted from his surviving sets of armour, his legs were not actually that long. Henry was a big fan of this painting by Hans Holbein the Younger, but it seems he did not fully appreciate the artist's talent for flattery. When the Crown had identified Anne of Cleves as a potential queen for Henry, the king sent the artist to paint her portrait. When he viewed the portrait, Henry made his mind up. He would marry this beautiful woman. Then he saw her in person and felt quite betrayed by the painting, stating, "She is nothing so fair as she hath been reported." Similarly, Anne of Cleves was not particularly taken by Henry's appearance either, and reportedly did not even recognise him upon their first encounter. This put Henry in a very tough spot, the hilarity of which he described as follows: "If it were not that she had come so far into my realm, and the great preparations and state that my people have made for her, and for fear of making a ruffle in the world, and of driving her brother into the arms of the Emperor and the French King, I would not now marry her. But now it is too far gone, wherefore I am sorry." Henry was essentially forced into a marriage he didn't actually want, and his frustrations caused rifts between him and the ambassadors who had convinced him of Anne's beauty. Bit convenient for this fella that the collapse of his many marriages was always someone else's fault, eh? Another British monarch who's been painted like a rugby player is Queen Elizabeth II. In 2001, artist Lucian Freud, grandson of Sigmund Freud, painted this portrait of the Queen, which was met with much criticism by the press. When Elizabeth was presented with the final portrait, she reportedly thanked Freud and said, "I've very much enjoyed watching you mix your colours," but did not actually reveal what she thought of the painting itself, which is how you politely thank someone for giving you a horrible gift without lying. "Wow, you must have gone through a lot of trouble to get me this inflatable dartboard." Yep. Nice one. In 1967, artist Peter Hurd painted a portrait of US President Lyndon B. Johnson that was intended to be his official portrait hung in the White House. This never came to pass though, because upon seeing the portrait, the president described it as "the ugliest thing I ever saw. Mate, it's literally you." The president rejected the portrait, and in turn Hurd had it displayed publicly and was very open about the president's decorum, describing him as very damn rude. In 1573, Italian painter Paulo Veronese painted this massive piece for the Basilica di Santi Giovanni e Paolo. It was intended as a Last Supper banquet scene, but Veronese depicted a lot of extra characters alongside Jesus and the apostles. Characters like dogs, jesters, and dwarves. This greatly angered Jesus, or at least it may have, according to the Catholic Church, and Veronese was summoned by the Holy Tribunal of the Inquisition to defend himself against charges of indecorum and blasphemy. The Inquisition posited that the inclusion of buffoons, drunken Germans, dwarves, and other such scurrilities at the scene of the Last Supper was an act bordering on heresy. Veronese explained that he included the superfluous figures because the commission required a massive canvas, and there was a lot of space to fill. The Inquisition was not sympathetic to his artistic plight though, and ordered him to remedy the artwork by painting the heresy out. Instead, he just renamed the painting the feast in the house of Levi, and claimed it was a reference to a different event mentioned in the Gospels rather than the Last Supper. Conveniently, the Gospels mention sinners being present at this feast, so Veronese did not make any changes to the painting itself, and he avoided further trouble. In 1954, English artist Graham Sutherland painted this portrait of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. The portrait had been commissioned by Parliament and presented to Churchill at a public ceremony on his 80th birthday. He absolutely hated it, barely managing to disguise his contempt as he politely described it as a remarkable example of modern art, as he accepted it. Privately, he described it as filthy and malignant, saying it made him look like a down-and-out drunk who had been picked out of the gutter in the Strand. He had originally told Sutherland the painting would not be suitable for the ceremony, but was convinced by friends that this could be seen as an insult to those who had commissioned it for him. So he accepted it, took it into his possession, and never displayed it. Either he or his wife had it destroyed shortly after. That does kind of make you wonder how many paintings were so despised by their subjects that we never even learned of their existence. Like, how many times did a powerful historical figure look at their portrait and hate it so much that they never wanted it to see the light of day? How many of these portraits were destroyed before anyone learned of them? I wonder how many masterpieces have been lost to time because of someone's vanity and arrogance. Then by way of contrast, you have someone like me producing these wretched things to be seen by people all over the world and presumably preserved for years to come. While there's some masterful work that got turned to ashes hundreds of years ago after only being seen by a handful of people. Well, maybe someday all this will be turned to ashes too, so you'd better appreciate it while it's still here. And I sure do have a lot of videos to appreciate, or at least observe impartially. So if you liked this one, go watch those ones, and subscribe to see more in the future. Until next time, stay safe.